This episode of Purpose After Sports is sponsored by the Chasm Gym, located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Chasm Gym is built on growth, grit, and connection. Whether you are a former athlete, a current athlete, or someone looking for new challenges, the Chasm Gym offers expert coaching and a supportive community that bridges the gap between where you are and where you want to be. So make sure to check out the Chasm Gym, and we want to thank them again so much for sponsoring this episode. Welcome to Purpose After Sports, where we interview athletes to share their post-sport journeys and explore how they are reinventing what it means to compete. Today, we have the head coach of the women's volleyball team for Illinois State University, Coach Allie Matters.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course, we are lucky to have you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come down and chit-chat with us. So walk our audience through, Bloomington, Illinois knows you pretty well, but for everyone else, tell us who you are, and then I want to start from the beginning of your sports journey, how we even got into sports.
Wow, that's a journey. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Go Bills. We're going to win a Super Bowl this year. You heard it here first. My aunt played volleyball at West Virginia. My uncle played volleyball at Penn State on the men's team.
Oh, wow.
My mom grew up playing volleyball. My Aunt Mary plays volleyball. So it was just kind of, my mom was like, you're going to go and you're going to like it. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And I went. I remember my first tryout and I loved it. Like it was just, I loved it immediately. So I had been playing, I think I was maybe 10. So I just kind of grew up playing volleyball, always wanted a scholarship. I had dreams to play at Nebraska. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
So that was a reality check for me. But I got a scholarship to play at Seton Hall. And that was back when getting a scholarship was like the creme de la creme to just get your academics paid for. I wanted to get my undergrad in marketing or business, so I thought it would be really cool to be close to New York City. So when Seton Hall offered me a scholarship, I couldn't wait. I was just so excited. Mm-hmm. And after talking about life after sport, after graduation on senior night, I was like, so let me get this straight. I'm just going to get a framed jersey. And it's like, thanks. Like, you're all set. Thanks for everything. And I just was like, I was like thinking about going into pharmaceutical sales. And then I just was like, maybe I'll just try to go be a GA, get into coaching. Yeah. And I went back to Buffalo and did my graduate assistantship at Canisius College in Buffalo, New York. Okay. And I think that was just kind of the moment of impact for me that I was like, I think this is what I want to do. So I kind of found my purpose after sport, but still wanting to be involved in sport, but was okay not being an athlete maybe anymore. Yeah. And then from there, I just stayed in coaching, and this is going to be year 7, going into my 8th year as a head coach. So I guess I found life after sport, but still am very much involved in volleyball and sport.
So rewind a little bit and talk to me about Seton and going to college there. Yep. What was the jump like going to that type of university, the highs and the lows?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's hard because we were just talking about it before we, started filming. Like there's just so much comparison now that I see my student athletes going through that I didn't feel like I had to deal with as an athlete. Like we went, we would go out with our friends and we had like a digital camera like around our wrist. And it was like, this is my digi, like you didn't upload your photos until the next night and, the next day. And you didn't know what your friends were doing at other universities or what their experiences were. People weren't sharing their experiences about mental health. You didn't know, what your friend's coach was like. You just didn't, you weren't constantly bombarded with comparison. You were just where you were at. There was no such thing as transferring. We didn't have a nutritionist. We didn't have mental health. I'm telling you right now, I wasn't eating clean in college. I didn't even know what that meant. So I just think that I think about what my, women have to go through now. And I'm happy that I was an athlete when I was. I just trying to keep up now with everything. So I guess that I don't even remember the lows of my time at Seton Hall because I don't know. I can't even be like, oh, this was really tough. I think school was really tough for me. But again, you weren't comparing yourself to other people. You were just like, this is where I'm at. This is where I want to be. And that was it. There was no chit chat about what everyone else was doing. And I think that's a huge issue now is Instagram and social. And there's so much like, oh, I should be doing that at that age. Why have I not done that yet? What is she getting? What is he like? It's just, so I think that is, I'm happy that I did what I did when I did it because I don't know how I would handle it now as a student athlete.
Oh yeah. It's a whole nother beast. And
Yep.
we don't even want to get into the transfer conversation because I mean,
yeah, maybe another day.
Another episode. Yep. That is a whole nother thing in itself. But no. So talk to me through, we are graduating and you mentioned a little bit, are you getting scared about there's no more volleyball or are you just like, what even got you into the steps of coaching, networking? How did that even begin?
Yeah, no, I remember applying for jobs.
Okay.
And I was like, you know, you had to like put your resume and I'm like, good volleyball player, mediocre in school, good leader. Like you're putting your resume together. And I was, and still am just like a big people person. I was like, I could talk to people all day. Like, I want to interact with people. Like I was always a captain. I was always in the coach's office. Like I was like, I think that I have some sort of like mentorship, leadership qualities to myself that I don't know if I can like sit at a desk. I don't know if I'm going to do that, you know? So that's why like going into pharmaceutical sales, I'm like, oh, I could just travel around and like chat with people all day. I knew that I didn't want monotony. I didn't want to just do the same thing from 8 to 5 every single day. You know what I mean? So I remember going back to Buffalo, New York, and I had the head coach at the time at Canisius College knew me from club volleyball.
Okay.
And so I just remember kind of walking into her office and was like, I need a job. I need a job and I need one now. You know, I remember I'll never forget, I checked my bank account. I had like $21 in there. $21. I mean, now that is like eggs and milk, you know? So I just remember being like, I need a job. And, you know, to be a graduate assistant, they gave you like a stipend that was nothing. They put us in apartments right across from the rec center. And so all the GAs just lived in apartments.
Okay.
Had a blast. It was really fun. But I wanted to make more money. I was like, how am I supposed to, if this is the coaching life, I don't know if I can do this. Like I need, you know, so there was actually a job that opened up in the laundry room at the university. So I'm sitting there. I would set my alarm for 5:30 and I would walk across the street and switch all the laundry in the athletic department. Switch all the laundry.
Lovely.
Close it, start it, and like trudge back across the street and then set my alarm again. I'm like, oh, the dryer. And I would walk back over there. During baseball season, I'm scrubbing baseball pants.
Oh,
like,
good gosh.
But that's just what you did. There's nothing else to do. So that's what I did. But I just think that, you know, I grew up blue collar, you know, like I was just used to working for anything that I could get, you know, so it wasn't, I tell that story now and people are like, what, laundry? And I'm like, at the time I was like, this is just what I have to do, you know? But that was just kind of when I knew that I wanted to be a coach long-term, and Canisius College is kind of where I got my start with that.
Okay. So when we get we started out as assistant.
Yes.
So how did we know, okay, maybe I do want to make the jump to becoming a head coach? Because no shame in wanting to stay an assistant. Some people never want the leadership role.
Highly encourage. When I was at Canisius, the woman that was that was an assistant when I did my undergrad at Seton Hall ended up getting the head coaching job at Seton Hall.
Okay.
So when I was done with my graduate degree, she was like, do you want to come back to Seton Hall and work for me?
Okay.
So that's where I went back to Seton Hall and was an assistant for her for like 6 seasons.
Oh, wow.
So I got my graduate degree and then I went back to Seton Hall again, was not making enough money to pay rent.
Yeah.
And so I was nannying full time while I was at, while I was an assistant.
Okay.
So I would go to work from like 8 to 4 or whatever. And then I would go and pick up Vincenza. Love you, girl. Right after work. And then I'd be with her until her parents came home.
Wow.
So, but I loved it. I was working for someone that I loved. I still love her.
Yeah.
So I just, I hate to say like it's who you know and it's your connections, but I don't know how many people are blindly just submitting a resume and getting plucked out of the pool when in reality, coaching is so relationship based that it really is like, hey, do I trust you? Do I know you? Do you have a good reputation? I was lucky to earn that respect as a player and then as an assistant. And, I was able to work for one of my best friends. So I was busy.
Just a little bit. So the first couple years as an assistant, how does it feel being in that same environment again as a coach now, and still being young? Do you have that trying to create that, I am an authority figure or like still wishing you're out in the court?
Yeah. I think it was a little bit of both. Like I was able to still, like as an assistant, I was warming up the team. I was still I was still doing volleyball things. It's not like I was just standing there with a clipboard. You know what I mean? Like I was still, and I just hoped as an assistant that I was someone that I thought maybe I needed as a player. And that's who my boss at the time, she was that assistant for me. Okay. So it was that's just kind of how I was brought up as a coach, of just being a mentor and being, there. And I remember at the time my athletes telling me stuff that I was like, oof, I probably didn't need to know that, but I'm glad you're telling someone. And if it has to be me, but I was able to build those relationships. So then when I did have to be tough or I did have to be like, hey, there was already that built-in respect, that built-in relationship. So it wasn't out of character when I had to ride them for something. It was like, no, she can do that because she actually knows who I am. And I think that's kind of beginning to be a lost art, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, 100%. Okay, so walk me through, we're an assistant for so long. How do we get the first head coaching position?
Okay, well, to be honest, it was just, now I have a staff at Illinois State. I'm very lucky. It's, me, Matt, Courtney, and Steve. I have these, people that work for me. When I was at Seton Hall, it was just, I call her Coach Al, but it was just, her name was Allie too, which is obnoxious. But it was just the two of us. We didn't have all of these people working. So I remember it was like a Tuesday, I'll say, and I was in the next room, from here to here, whatever, working on an itinerary. Okay. And I heard my boss say, I don't want it, but my assistant will. And I was just like, what? Yeah. Whatever. And she played at Wright State. That was her alma mater. So when the Wright State job opened, they called her. And she didn't want it at the time. Wow. She just thought it wasn't a good move for her. She thought it was too lateral or a step down. But she knew going into year 7 that I was ready.
Oh, wow.
So she just was like, hey, little bird, it's time to get the hell out of my nest, So, and I wasn't ready. I was very comfortable. I was nannying. I just was like, everyone talks about stepping outside of your comfort zone, and it's all fine and good. But when you want to take that step from being a first assistant to a head coach, you better be ready. Yeah. And she walked in and she's like, you are going to interview at Wright State. You're ready. You have everything that you need. If there's one thing I'm going to be able to do for you, this is going to be it. And I need you to be serious about it. And I just was like, okay, I'm ready. And I put all my resume together. That was way better than what I was doing in college, being decent volleyball player, bad student. I was really proud of just the body of work that I was able to put together. So it was, I went and I interviewed and I ended up getting the Wright State job. And so I it's not that I wasn't looking, but I was like, maybe I'll go be an assistant at a Power 5 school. Or I just thought that my trajectory was maybe that I had another stop along the way. I wasn't, but yeah, I interviewed for the Wright State job and got it. So it was cool to have, when I was working for Allie at Seton Hall, when we would go out recruiting, she would introduce me to all of her old friends that she played with at Wright State.
Okay.
So I got the head coaching job and I already knew the alums. I knew the SWA, who was her head coach at the time. Like, it was just this circle of, I was leaving comfort, but I wasn't just going into a situation that I was like, wow, I don't know anyone. Like,
Right.
I was familiar with enough people to be a little bit comfortable with where I was headed.
And that kind of circles back to what we were talking about earlier of just like, again, who you know, and just always being willing to network or just introduce yourself in a room, because you never know when it's going to come back.
Yeah. And we, like, now the Final Four for volleyball is held, it's like the AVCA conventions. There's all these seminars and everything. And I'll never forget the first AVCA convention I went to. Khakis and polo, folder, backpack. I was ready to go.
Yeah.
And I remember just being terrified of everybody.
Yeah.
All the head coaches. I'm like, oh my God, these people. It's like when you like see a magazine and it's like celebrities are just like us, and they show like Jennifer Garner eating a sandwich, you know? So now when I'm at convention, I see those first time attendees in khakis and a polo. And I'm just like, you know, so I remember just trying to meet new people and go, but I know that isn't the people. Not everyone just feels comfortable going up to someone.
Yeah.
But you're doing it right now. People love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about their journey. So if anything, for young assistants or people just trying to just go up and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And just say, you know, maybe you know something and, oh, I saw you guys played, you know, Marquette. That was a hell of a match, whatever. And it's easier than you think. And us head coaches, we're just people. We really... Not all very normal, but we are just people. You know what I mean?
So walk me through those first years with Wright State. How did that go? And where were you at mentally with that too?
Yeah. No, I was very lucky. I inherited, there was a bunch of seniors that were graduating and we were getting a big incoming freshman class. So it was just, they had gone for the past 9 seasons. It's so far from now, but they had gone 17 and 74 in 6 years.
Oh, wow.
So I was, you know, with all due respect, you're just kind of inheriting the bad news bears.
Yeah.
So there were things that, you know, the old head coach was just her rules and how she was running things. Those simple things that I changed was like immediate buy-in.
Oh, wow.
Like it was immediate. Like
Okay.
Everyone's like, oh, what'd you do? And I'm like, you know, I just did this, this, and this. And it was just... at the time, the conference took the top 8 teams or 6 teams to the conference tournament, and they hadn't been to the tournament in a decade.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, you guys, the goal this year is to not win a championship. It's to come in 6th place. Like, who says that? I'm like, let's come in 6th. That sounds great.
Yeah.
And we did it. We ended up securing that last seed, and we went to the conference tournament for the first time in a decade.
That's amazing.
It was so cool. It was so cool. And then the next year, like we went off, we secured the athletic department's first ever at-large bid to the NCAA tournament. Like it was just, then we won a championship. Then we were hanging rafters. Then we got like a big donation and we put up a video board and we redid our floor. Like it was, I still look back at that time and know it was the best start to my head coaching career. But I also know we were winning so much that when I got here to ISU and we were losing, it was unfortunately for me the first time I had ever really lost. So I'm not saying that Wright State didn't prepare me, but if I could go through all the adversity that I handled in that time, there were little things here and there, but not nearly as much as I went through inheriting, you know, the program at ISU and just kind of going through what I've been through since I got here. So it's tough.
Well, an amazing career in coaching with Wright, but how do you make the decision, I want to leave this?
Illinois State called me.
Okay.
I'll say it was another Tuesday because let's just stick to the script. And Leanna Bordner called me and she had sent me an email and she was like, I want to get your opinion on a couple of our candidates. So I'm like, oh, maybe they're going after someone I know.
Okay.
And I knew Illinois State was a good job when it opened. I was like, wow, it's a good job.
Yeah.
And so she had asked me, she's like, I'm going to ask you about 3 people, went down the line. And on the third question, she's like, and how happy are you at Wright State? So she knew exactly what she was doing.
Yeah.
I tell her every day, I'm like, Leanna, you know what you did. And she goes, and I would do it again. So Leanna was great. And I just felt, Wright State, I kind of had reached, I was like, I don't know what else I'm going to accomplish here, and I felt that just in terms of like resources and support. And I had always dreamed of being a part of like a college town. Wright State is a huge commuter campus.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I think that we talk about like the trajectory of your coaching career. I'm like, this makes sense for me.
Yeah.
And I had a great call with Leanna, and telling the Wright State team that I was leaving still, it's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. It was horrible.
Yeah.
But now, a bunch of the whole entire Wright State team came to my wedding. A couple of it was like, they knew it then. Now they understand why I did what I did. But then I know it was very difficult for them to understand, like, you're leaving us here. You did all of this with us and now you're leaving.
Yeah.
But now they understand that I had to do what I had to do for my family and for my own career.
Yeah.
And I think as coaches, you do so many things for other people. And sometimes you just have to do something for yourself, even though it might hurt people in the process or make you feel like you're leaving people behind,
Oh, 100%. And I first had so many coaches throughout my career. And now I can look back and, it's decisions they had to make, like you said, and it's not personal. It's stuff that they had to do for themselves. But like as an athlete, you're like, I'm being abandoned.
Yeah.
Like they don't care. And
I know, it's horrible.
You're just horrible. Like, what was me? But like you grow up and you realize like, it had happened.
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah.
It's nice to hear from the other side. Okay. So walk me through how we're feeling when we step into Illinois State, like mentally and the program's history.
Yep. Yeah. I think that was hard to inherit a program that was successful. Whereas at Wright State, I was inheriting a program that wasn't successful at the time. But I felt very qualified for the job. I knew how to build a culture. I knew what I was doing, the X's and O's of volleyball, but I think that it was really hard to bring new ideas or to change things when, the upperclassmen, especially the seniors, are like, well, we've been doing this for 4 years and we won championships these past 4 years. So why would we change it? And I'm like, because I don't know how to do that.
Right.
Like it's just, I'm not talking about like serving and attacking. I'm talking about like the overall culture of the program. So I think that was an adjustment. And I mean, accepting the job at ISU, they flew my parents and my grandmother to Bloomington from Buffalo, put them in a hotel. My wife, her parents came from Dayton, put them in a hotel. Yeah. I had a press conference and I was like, okay, that guy from the mailroom is probably going to be there. The guy from the pantograph is going to, like, I just thought, coming from where I was coming from, I'm like, I knew there would be excitement about the job and about me, accepting the position, but they had me at the football stadium and, in upstairs and they had me in another room and they're like, all right, they're ready for you. And we were all just like in there and I was just like, oh my God. And they brought me out and I mean, the room was packed.
Oh yeah.
It was packed, so I knew just the strong history and tradition and legacy of ISU volleyball. And I'm not saying I underestimated it, but I was used to getting immediate buy-in because that's all I knew as a head coach at Wright State. I didn't have other stops to compare it to. So when I got to ISU and in that first season, we were really struggling. We had lost some kids to the transfer portal. I brought some athletes that were going to be incoming freshmen at Wright State. I brought them to me. I brought them with me at ISU. Yeah. And the first season was really, really difficult. And I'm finally feeling better in year 3 and getting my footing, but that's 3 years. Yeah. It's a long time.
Can we talk a little bit about, because your team has still had success in those 3 years. Yes. And so I don't want to glaze over that. You've done still a great job at ISU, but how do you want to continue to keep growing? And how do you think that you've been able to still make success coming into the program?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I've really had to do a lot of reflection personally as a person, as a head coach, as a female, as a role model, as all of the hats that I have to wear. Yeah. For coaches, unfortunately, like you're judged so much on the win-loss category. either, and that's what my athletes go through. If you have a good game and you win, you're worthy.
Yeah.
If you have a bad game, you lose, you're nothing.
Right.
And so I'm trying to win in the in-between. Are my athletes prepared for life after sport? Are they feeling like overwhelmed with life after sport? Are they, I don't want to say, are they better people than when I got them, but they come to me when they're 17, 18 years old and they leave when they're 21 and they're 22. Like, am I sending good people out into the world? Are they going to call me 3 years from now and say, hey, coach, nah. Hey, Allie, something came up. Can you help me? Or like, hey, I've written letters of recommendation. Like, those aren't what's written in the newspaper. That's not what people are talking about in the message boards, but that is what is important to me.
Yeah.
And I think just knowing the landscape of college athletics and knowing the landscape of mental health and what it is to be a student athlete right now, the wins and losses, unfortunately, are going to define my career and the rest of my contract.
Yeah.
But me personally, as a person, I'm finding other ways to just kind of say, well, this is me winning, So I think that the more I focus on that, the wins are coming more and the losses are coming less. So it just kind of works out when you stay true to like why you actually started coaching.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to tell student athletes. Why did you actually start playing?
Right.
Not so that you could use Allie 10% at checkout for NIL money. That's not why you started playing ball.
Right.
You know what I mean? You didn't start playing ball so you could compare yourself to what Illinois is doing down the street. Like, that's not why you started playing. So we just all have to remember why we got into what we got into. And I think those moments of reflection are what's best for growth in general,
So walk me through what it's like coaching specifically women. Because as coaches, I mean, believe it or not, you still have good and bad days too.
Yeah.
And, still having to walk into a gym, maybe having a tough day or a tough night and be okay. And then with girls, a lot of us in one room, you're going to have a bunch of different energies. How do we deal with that?
Yeah. One of our seniors actually, Nora, she was in Cassie's class. We started doing these like wellness checks every day.
Okay.
We usually, we need them by 10 a.m. or noon, whatever. And we ask for, on a scale of 1 to 5, we ask them to rate their mood, sleep, mental health, soreness, academics, and then there's a little comment box. And if anything is below a 3, 5 is rainbows and sunshine, and 1 is like, I'm down bad crying at the gym. Anything below a 3, they have to comment why. And it changed our program. I mean, it has turned in, and it could be anything. Like, I think too many coaches are like, leave your problems at the door.
Right.
So you're really going to tell someone like, hey, my grandmother passed away last night, but like, leave that at the door. We have to do, passing formations.
Right.
Like, it's just so horrible to just tell people to leave it at the door when, if you really say that you're holistic or that you care about them as people, that doesn't work.
Right.
So some of it has turned into journal entry, like, oh my God, dead from lift, dead AF, like SOS, help me. Like, it's sometimes it's comical. Yeah. Sometimes it's like, God, like, we're kind of at that time that, our athletes are like 18 to 22. So maybe a grandparent dies for their first grandparent. The family dog is about 14, 15, whatever. So as coaches, we kind of know things that are going to come up just in their lives. Yeah. But it's just helped when I walk into the gym, I kind of already know, like, hey, like, instead of riding that kid, what's her deal? What's going on? And one of her buds is like, hey, her grandma passed away last night. Yeah. I need to know, like, I should know that. Right. And that has really changed everything for us in terms of, females and feelings and body language. And luckily for my athletes, I am like an empath. Like, I am like, gotta cry every day in some way, shape, or form. I care what my girls think of me, which sometimes is really good. Sometimes my wife is like, you gotta just be okay with them being mad at you. I'm like, but I don't want them to be mad at me. Like, I needed to say what I needed to say. Yeah. So I think that's lucky for them. I'm not a person that can shut off feelings. Like, if I have to deliver bad news, like my tissues in my office are just being replenished.
Yeah.
They're crying, I'm crying. Like I just don't want to disappoint my girls. I don't want them to toss and turn at night thinking about like, oh, where do I stand? Am I even important? Like I don't want to have that power over anyone, especially my girls.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be like, God, I had a horrible dream about you last night. I was like, what was I doing? Like, so I just think lucky for them, I am very in tune with my emotions. And it's important that if I come into practice and their body language is off, I'm like, well, blah, 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 what's going on with those two?
Right.
Like, and I take care of it that day, you know? So it's hard. It's hard coaching females, but it's lucky for them. I'm the biggest female there is. So I get it.
So what, have you always been, you know, very in tune with your emotions?
Yes.
And because, you know, sometimes with coaching, you can feel or see that it's not okay to let the athlete see that side of you. And I think that's amazing that they're able to see you as a human.
Yeah.
Did that grow with your coaching?
Kind of, sort of. I've just always been that way. So it's kind of like, you know, I've had to change like my recruiting because I always recruit kids that are like type A, super emotional, super crazy. People are like flying through chairs and stuff. But then you put 15 or 6, I mean, you have a circus of psychos, you know? So I've had to change my recruiting of be like, wow, like she's more soft-spoken, she's more reserved, but we need that balance because I have people flying through chairs over here. I need someone who's like, dude, I'm not going through that chair.
Right,
it's not worth it to me, you know? So it has grown a little bit, but I've never had negative kickback of like, I've never had an athlete being like, I don't like when she shows that. I don't like that. I don't want to, you know, we always have the team over to our house of like, you just want to be in a home with a home cooked meal. And, you know, I want that relationship with my girls. So I've never felt that it's given me a disadvantage of being like, God, it's everyone's just happy to be here. You know what I mean? Or like, oh, I'm just a friend of these girls. They don't, you know, they listen when I speak, you know, they're serious when it's time to be serious. But there's a part of me that just understands that all of this is so important right now of what they're doing. But then they're going to be 36, 37, 38. I have no idea. And they're going to look back at that time and there's going to be so much that they don't remember. But what they do remember, I don't want it to be like my coach ruined my life. Because there's enough people that you talk to. Or there's enough alums of different programs that don't want to come back, that don't want to donate because of who led them. And I will know it is time to step away from coaching when I no longer feel that I have the ability to motivate, that I have the ability to lead, to mentor, or be empathetic to the chapter that they are in their lives. Like if you can't do that anymore, you should not be leading young people. I feel very strongly about it.
I do too. And
Soapbox.
I think, no, like that can be in a whole nother episode because I do like the lasting impact. Coaching at whatever age is very important, but yes, like you said, you're leaving a lasting impression at whatever age you are. And this sometimes is the last impression that they have in athletics. And you want it to be a good one in the best way you can. You know what I mean? It's not always possible, but talk to me about being a woman in this field and being a coach. I mean, so I'm biased. I think we're awesome, but like, what is it like? Is there competition with, you know, trying to kind of prove yourself or how do you kind of combat with that?
Yeah, I think me just being an extrovert and just being like comfortable in a room of people, I don't care who the people are, young, old, black, white, men, women, you know, I've never been shy. So I guess that has worked in my advantage of when I am uncomfortable, I just start talking or I go up to someone or, you know, I think that not that it's easy to say like, oh, college athletics is the old boys club or, you know, if you're a female, but I think it's really finding like Illinois State, like they value women in athletics. You know, the Title IX event at Illinois State was like a 4-day bender. You know, they did, you know, breakfast, lunch, dinner, speakers, seminars, like, and most athletic departments get a bunch of females together, slap them on a graphic and be like, happy Title IX day, you know? So there are athletic departments that I feel like it was years ago, they they rated athletic departments. They gave you an A if you had women leading women or how many female head coaches you have.
Right.
And I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I believe that Illinois State volleyball has never had a male head coach. You know, so I've been lucky to work at institutions where women do have a voice and there's no, oh God, I can't get on that committee because it's all the guys or, you know, so I don't know. Luckily I haven't had a lot of issues where I don't feel like I'm heard and maybe it's just me making sure I am heard in those rooms. Shocker. But I don't know. I think that it's just not that when you know what you're talking about, but when you bring things to the table, people are going to listen. It's just this preconceived notion that, oh, since I'm a female, people aren't going to listen to me. Or since I'm shy, who's going to even listen? It's like, no, you just got to walk into a room and be like, this is what I have to say. This is what I have to share. And you'd be surprised how many people are like, all right, sounds good to me. Like, cool. Sounds good, you know?
What would you say to someone who is a little bit more reserved in their personality, but maybe wants to be a head coach or a leader in some way?
Yeah, I think that that's just kind of the balance thing that I was talking about. You know, it's the same as like me putting my staff together. Like Courtney Wagner, who's my second assistant, she is extroverted, she's goofy, she's fun, but her and I really balance each other out. You know what I mean? So if you're not, you know, the loudest person in the room, necessarily the life of the party, an extrovert. There is an extrovert that is looking for someone like you to balance her out, you know? So it's just like recruiting. Like there is someone for everyone. There is a good fit, whether it be NAIA or Division I, whether it be a Power 5 or a small conference. It's the same as coaching. Like there is a place for everyone. It just unfortunately and fortunately comes down to who you know, how you can network yourself, how you can have those uncomfortable conversations. At the AVCA convention, khaki, polos, took my resumes and said, every day I'm going to go up to someone that scares me and I'm going to give them my resume.
Oh, that's huge.
Dripping sweat. How am I going to do this? Whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember I was sitting at a Starbucks in the convention center and Shannon Wells, who at the time was the assistant at Florida. And I was like, how am I going to be like her? Like you can't even fathom it when you just are getting started in something. And I went to grab my resume and I dumped my coffee over on my resume. And I was like,
oh,
you know, and she saw me across the room do it. And she was like, oh, like, are you good? And I'm like, like, I was just coming over to talk to you. But like, even that like silly interaction, now I see Shannon not recruiting and she's like, hey, and I'm like, hey, you know? So I just think like, you know, you really have to work up the courage. And when you really understand that, not that who I am now doesn't compare to who Shannon Wells was at the time, but who I am now is someone that I've always wanted to be. And still I'm like, what can I do better? What's the next step? I want more. But at a time, this is all I ever wanted.
Right.
But we're conditioned to say, I want more. It's not good enough. What else can we do? When in reality, everybody has to start somewhere. And you just have to work up the courage to say, hey, I'm Allie. Nice to meet you. You know, and just people are more friendly than you think. People want to chat. People want to share their experiences. And then that is done. It's over with. And you always know you can walk up to Shannon Wells and be like, hey, remember when? And she's like, yeah,
I do.
I do.
I do want to end on a couple of things. First of all, I want to congratulate you on your family, your growing family.
Thank you.
Can we talk about motherhood and also balancing the craziness of it all?
Yes. Yeah, I'm very lucky. My wife, Sarah, played soccer collegiately at Rhode Island.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
So that is just she gets it. She understands it. She loves it. Sometimes I come home and I don't want to talk about work. She's like, how was practice? You know, how did Kennedy look? How's Michaela doing? And I'm like, oh.
No.
But she loves it, you know. Whenever I'm like watching a recruit, she like looks at the laptop. Like I know not everyone has that, and being a partner of a college coach is very difficult. And when the Illinois State job came up, I'm like, because she's from Dayton, Ohio. So when we were at Wright State, you know, like her sister lived across the street with our niece and like her parents are down the road. I was like, we can just stay here. Let's just stay in Dayton. It's so warm and cozy here. Like, I was uncomfortable. And she's like, pack up your stuff.
Yeah.
You're taking this job. This is what you've always wanted. And we just packed up and left, you know? So I know that it's been really difficult for her, but she's just always been so supportive, you know? And, you know, we knew that we wanted to have a family, but I think that talking about it and then actually doing it and then actually having a child is like just a whole different thing. And we were trying to time things up so that the baby wouldn't come during season. Yeah. But expensive science does not care about any of that. So our baby's due date was November 4th, and she came 3 weeks early, October 14th. And of course, that was our midweek match against Bradley.
Okay, so big game.
Yeah. So we went for like just a routine checkup, and they were like, your blood pressure is like ridiculous. Yeah. You are having a baby today.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, I didn't even eat breakfast. Like, I'm not even wearing a good shirt. Like, we had to like run home. Well, we went to the hospital at like 10 a.m. and she was born like a little bit before 1. So it was,
Oh, wow.
So it's crazy. So, and I'm texting my staff being like, morning. Everyone's like, hey, game day, best day. I'm like, game day, baby day. Like, my wife is having a baby today. Right now. So my staff coached that game on their own.
Oh my gosh.
I had to text the team like, oh my God. I waited until Violet was born and I sent them like a picture of her, and my team went crazy. And it was just, you know, my wife, like emergency C-section, was like literally recovering. I like brought the Roku, had the game up. I'm like rocking the baby. My wife is like completely out of it. Like she doesn't remember. She has no recollection of watching the game.
Oh, wow.
Like it was literally like however many hours after her surgery. But you know, that's just another way of just like letting people into your life as a coach. The transition was difficult for my girls of like, hey, I wasn't around. I missed practices. You know, I didn't miss a match after that, but they always saw me as a person. They knew I wanted to be a mom. They know that I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm an aunt, you know, all of those things. So the transition was difficult, but they knew that that's what I wanted, you know? So, I mean, it's definitely difficult. But again, that's the next step. That's what we wanted. That's what we've always wanted. And we're excited to, you know, now that she's getting older, she was like a little preemie. So now that she's older, she's gained more weight. We're excited to, you know, for the girls to get back to school and share her with them. And it's exciting. It really, it's just a cool thing. And Bloomington Normal is just such a cool community. Like, we're not around family. So like just people like dropping off preemie clothes and casseroles and just like really being supportive that's the best thing about Bloomington Normal is the support that like you never feel alone. And even when, you know, like I was having my first couple of seasons and things weren't going well. You just, again, equate your worth with success. So I'm like, people are, you know, the hype for me is over. People aren't excited that I'm here anymore. And the people that really care and really understand what coaching entails are the people that have stuck around. So now when I'm doing well and those people are still around, those are the people that you're like, you have been, you know, I don't know if it's like cool, but my day ones, like those are the people that are still around. So it's been such a cool journey. But yeah, motherhood is difficult, but I think, again, if you're at the right university, the right community, I'm not saying it's going to be seamless. And I'm lucky that, you know, I have an amazing wife that's supportive and that understands that I have a job to do. But that support really makes it easy.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. I always ask my people that come on here one more question. I want to know what advice that you would give to any former athlete that potentially is struggling, or maybe something that you would have wanted to hear at that time.
God, how much time do we have?
Hey, look, I'm here. We're booked, so.
God, I was actually thinking about it this morning. The other day could be last year or this morning. That, you know, unfortunately for all you people, you're just only going to know when you're in it. You know, so all of your elders are telling you all of these things that, oh, wait till you're my age. You're going to wish that you would have done that. You know, I was just talking about my undergrad, just gallivanting around New York City, or they say, you don't know what the good old days are going to be until you're out of the good old days.
Right.
My good old days are gone. They're done. And I have a lot of photos. I have a lot of videos. You know, you're just not going to know it until you're out of it. But I challenge you to just be where your feet are. Because when that time is done, I mean, I think, you know, body image is just such a strong thing right now in terms of mental health and being an athlete and lifting and nutrition and eating clean and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And granted, back in my day, there was no Mick Ultra. There was no High Noons. You had Natty Ice or vodka. So I appreciate everything that they have now for our legal student athletes. But, you know, I think back to my body then, or my body in my early 20s and my late 20s. My arms. Oh, I wish I was that.
Right.
And, you know, now I'm sitting here being like, God, I'm looking at photos of when I was 27 being like, damn, like you looked good. Why were you, you know, and unfortunately, like as a woman especially, and I'm not saying that men don't deal with body image issues, but it's just, I just don't want them to get to their late 30s and look back at their 20s and be like, God, what was I chasing?
Yeah.
What did I want? I had it all right there. And then you're going to be 40 and then you're going to think about your 30s. And I guess that's just a part of growth. But I've really, really tried. I've been unfollowing people on Instagram that make me feel like crap.
Yeah.
I've followed more pages that make me feel inspired, cooking pages that have cheese and oil, not cooking pages that are like, hey, eat meat with lettuce wrap. I need bread. So I just think protect yourself and, you know, protect, you know, I have been in therapy, and one of my therapist, there was a exercise that pretend your 6-year-old self is sitting across from you.
Gosh.
Painful, hated it. Cried, sobbed, you know, but really, I mean, you know, it's the same as like now I see my daughter Violet and I'm just kind of like, I find it hard to even yell at my players because I'm like, that's somebody's Violet.
Yeah.
That's somebody's babe, you know, and there's just so much ahead for all of my student athletes and all my girls. And I just don't want them to get to their late 30s and wish that they would have just been more present and just be present. And I know that it's virtually impossible, but surround yourself with people that make you feel good about yourself, you know, and just be good to yourself, because it's just, there's so much junk and there's so much noise that you can look at and follow that makes you feel less than. And it's just, you run out of time, you know, not to be all physiological about it, but you just do. You do.
No,
you know?
I love that. That was a great piece of advice. Yeah. Something that I'm personally going to take, because I'm a worrier. So like I'm thinking about,
I know,
you know, 10 years down the road, it's like
but think about yourself. Like if you really, even when you're down bad or when you're really struggling, can't you really say now that everything has always worked out?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I look back and I'm like, what were you doing? Like, why were you freaking out? It's fine. Everything's fine. But it's hard to like be in that that moment. So.
It is. It's difficult, you know? So I think that's just such a good exercise, is to be like, what am I really upset right now?
Yeah.
You know, am I insecure? Am I comparing myself to others? Like, it's just so, you can just really spiral getting yourself into a place that you don't really deserve to be in.
Right.
You know, and I think that's why, you know, we're dealing with like suicide for student athletes and just people that are getting themselves to a point that they think it's better to just not be here than to be in the noise that they hear every single day. And I think as coaches, as leaders, as people that mentor young people, I am not saying that coaches are responsible for student athletes committing suicide. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah.
But we're educated on that every single year about suicide and, you know, the signs that, you know, things to look out for. And I think that's a huge, huge responsibility to take on as a coach, of worrying about, are they good? And it's always the kid that you don't think it is, which is a double whammy of just like, God, if that kid, you know, so, you know, I just think that you just really have to be careful with these young minds when they're in the most transformative time of their life. You know, they're just so precious.
I definitely agree. And I want to thank you so much.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Taking your time to come again.
Yep.
Audience and me personally definitely needed to hear everything you had to say. If you enjoyed this episode and want more stories like this, make sure that you subscribe, turn on those notifications, and we will be posting again next week. We'll see you soon.